that's why we came up with the 7 roadblocks to asking, because there's just, everybody needs to look at these, because we all have at least one of them, if not more. And so Mark mentioned unworthiness. I just want to talk about him for a minute, Will, because these are so important. Unworthiness, it's just kind of conditioning from childhood that kind of is always telling us we don't deserve better. It's at a subtle level. So we just live that way. So we don't ask for the things, we don't ask for our best life. And the second one is naivete. And that's just really like not being aware of what's even out there for you. And I tell this story in the book about Imelda, who was a Filipino woman who worked for us when my children were very young, and she cooked these amazing dishes from her homeland. And one day she shows up at my house with this fruit, and she cuts it up. She's like, try this. And it's this juicy orange fruit. And I taste it. I'm like, that is the best fruit I've ever had. What is that? And she goes, it's a mango. And I was like, a mango? Why haven't I ever had a mango before? I traveled all over Europe. I thought I was really worldly. And I was like, where do you get these? Thinking she had to import them. And she goes, at the grocery store. And I go, I've been walking past these at the grocery store every day. What else am I missing? Just because I'm naive. I don't even know it's there for me.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Right. It made me think, like, what else am I passing by in my life? What other cool things? What other amazing things? What opportunities, experiences, people am I just passing by? Because I, in my personal experience thus far, have not seen it. I just don't even know it exists. So we need to rekindle that curiosity. Part of the asking journey is rekindling your curiosity. Wonder about everything. Ask about everything, because that might be your next idea, your next cue, your next breakthrough. So that's an important one. Doubt is the next one. It's kind of what
we're on the third one. I'm writing these down, right?
Third one, yeah. Doubt.
I have any doubt? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of kind of what you just described. Like, a lot of people just, I doubt it's going to change anything. I doubt that it's going to work. I doubt, so they just kind of exist at this sort of gray level, what I call the gray level, right? It's just this level of doubt that anything good can come from anything. So I'm just not even going to try. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to inquire. I'm not going to do anything different. Excuses really is about that, is the next one. And it's about sort of that stubborn pride that people have. I'm sure people like this who you're like, hey, why don't you try? No, I don't need that. Why don't you ask for this? No, I've got it figured out. They're not going to ask anybody. They've got it figured out. Don't tell them what to do. Stubborn pride, right? And that stubborn
pride. When you say Dee knows people like this, unfortunately, that's the vast majority of the population.
Right.
They believe that their belief system is the right one and that everybody else's is wrong. And, that's part of the problem is the broken belief system that they're being raised with is then ingrained. And they're like, okay, anybody that disagrees with me. And right now, like you were saying earlier, Mark, what was the phrase you used? Crisis invites opportunity, or crisis equals opportunity, right? What's happening right now with the COVID, with politics and all this stuff, like it's shining a spotlight on this polarity that has happened, where it's like you got these people that believe this way, you got these people, and it's become a me versus you, and it's just so dangerous and unhealthy, and the world is going in the wrong direction. So sorry to interrupt you, but
that is such a great point, and it's true. That stubborn pride where we think we're right, we don't ask. People aren't even asking; they just want to believe that stubbornly that they're right. Don't even question it, right? And the next one is fear. And that's a big one for people. Some people are just literally terrified to ask anyone anything of anyone, because they're afraid of rejection, because somehow rejection to a human being can represent like a loss of love or approval, right?
Absolutely.
So it just like wipes them out. The idea of, that rejection of love or rejection of approval, they can't deal with it psychologically. But if you can, just become aware of these, it changes everything. The next thing is pattern paralysis. Those people who do the same thing year after year after year, the same thing that doesn't work any better the next month or the following month or the next year for years. Like, they will waste a lifetime in this pattern paralysis instead of questioning, is this working? This, just because you do it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Just step back and look at your pattern. And then the final one is disconnection. And for me, that's one of the saddest ones of all, because what that means is you've just become disconnected from the dreams in your heart. You it's a sort of a state of apathy, like you've just kind of given up. And that's so sad because none of us should give up on our dreams. I mean, we're all here to be our maximum best, to do, each of us has a purpose. And it doesn't have to be like you're going to be president, right? It can be so many things. You can be the greatest janitor at school. My daughter is a teacher, and she talks about this janitor who saves everybody. He's so important to the teachers because he's always in there building little things for them or making their day better. And they love him so much. He gets so much, talk about the value circle. He gives so much value by just going the extra mile to help these teachers who always need help, setting up their classrooms and things. He gets, certificates to wonderful restaurants and stores. I mean, he probably makes 50% more from just the gifts he gets, so it's contributing back again. But, we can't give up on our lives or ourselves. We need to really dig into those dreams in our hearts, become connected to ourselves and our greatest potential, and start asking, what I like to ask, and Mark and I do this a lot, is asking God, what is the purpose for which you made me? What is the greatest expression for which I am made? Whatever it is, let me be that.
Right. I mean, I just wrote all this down. Those are so great. By the way, I've ordered your book. It hasn't come yet, and I'm excited to, but I like to take notes, and I'll put them in the show notes and stuff. But those are great. I mean, those are unworthiness, naivety, doubt, excuses, fear, pattern paralysis, and disconnection. And then I have little notes on each one. I mean, right. Obstacles come up in life, and most of us, like you said, it's, they don't step back, and they get into that pattern paralysis one. My whole thing is about habits. What habits are you building? Habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting us. They're going to do their thing no matter what. Over time, they're going to compound, and they're going to form who we are. So it's like, if you don't know a habit that you have is hurting your life and building negative momentum, like you're just so far behind the 8 ball. But if you can figure out what those are and start changing those, but we get in these routines, and then our brains, it's science. We're trying to conserve energy, and our brain's going, okay, got that one. Now I got room for another one, right? But if that one over there is hurting you, that ain't good.
So let me talk about a historical example. One of my heroes is Andrew Carnegie, who taught Napoleon Hill how to write, think, grow rich, and introduced him to 500 people. But what people don't know is that he had lots of obstacles. He only had a 3rd grade education, ends up giving us 4,852 libraries, right? Because he became worth $4 trillion in today's dollars. So he was richer even than Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. Point is that he made the railroads because he came up with Bessemer Steel, and he's shipping all the oil for Rockefeller, who wanted to take over Bessemer Steel, and he built pipelines without telling anyone, and then he stopped using it all in one day, thinking he'd put Andy out of business. Well, Andy said, wait a second, that's an obstacle, right? In adversity, I'm going to just overcome it. What did he do? He built the Empire State Building before that with Bessemer Steel. Before that, no building was over 2 or 3 stories because they didn't have what's called structural integrity. I don't want to go into architecture for you, but you get the point. You couldn't build a high-rise building. Well, today, 100 years later, the only reason we have high-rise buildings is because there was an adversity, and Andy asked himself, how do I get out of this? How do I solve this? This guy's trying to put me out of business. How do I become the richest, best example of myself so I can really contribute at levels nobody's ever contributed at?